This is Right on the Money with Tom Mosley, founder of Mosley Wealth Management.
Our mission at Mosley Wealth Management is to help people make sure they never run out of income the rest of their life and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes.
Since 1995, Tom Mosley and his team have been creating comprehensive, custom financial plans to help you preserve what you've earned and pursue what you've envisioned.
In retirement, a lot of people have built a great lump sum. We call that your lumber yard. But you need a blueprint to put that lumber yard into a plan that you can build a retirement house to live in.
What's on your mind this week, Southern California? The stock market, taxes, inflation, income, Social Security, how to ease into the life of your dreams? Let's discover conservative financial strategies starting right now. This is your Right on the Money Radio Hour with Tom Mosley.
And a very happy weekend to you. You are listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management based right here in Southern California. And I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. Each week, Tom and I are committed to providing you with retirement planning solutions. We're so glad you're joining us today. The subject of today's show is It's Not Your Parents' Retirement Anymore. We're going to talk about some of the changes that are happening for today's modern retiree. We're going to talk about inflation. And then finally, how do you assess if you are actually retirement ready? Tom, my friend, always a joy to be with you. What's going on in your world this week?
Not much. Drying out a little bit here in Southern California. We're just waiting for some more rain, because we need it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And just for our listeners, has anyone in your circle with Mosley Wealth Management been directly impacted by the fires?
No, but everybody knows somebody. I mean, it is just so unbelievably devastating. I mean, when they say it looks like a nuclear bomb went off, that's exactly the pictures you saw of Nagasaki and Hiroshima from World War II. That's what it looks like up at Pacific Palisades. Now, we have a couple of offices. We were very near the fires in Encino at our office in Encino, and we were very near the fires with our office in Arcadia. So, but praise God, nothing ever happened to us. But at the same time, we're praising the Lord for nothing happened to us. It was just devastating to so many people.
So many, absolutely. Well, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone who's been affected. And I know that your heart is to care for people, who are experiencing loss right now in the midst of all this as well.
If it's not coming your way right now, I used to have a pastor who would always say, you're either just getting out of a mess or just about to go into a mess, or you're in a mess right now. So, so it's just about, that's just life. And when all of the bad things and all of the negative things go away, it'll be no more life. But while we're here, we have to go through things like this. But the nicest thing in the world is just helping somebody. If you know somebody who needs help, reach out to them and help them, because it's much like the loss that I used to go through with people in the churches that I pastored when I was pastoring. Everybody in the world misses that person the first week or maybe even the second week, but it's those really close loved ones who were impacted the most who miss them a month, 3 months, 6 months down the road. And there are people who were devastated with the fires that we had in the first part of January, but they're still devastated because they still go home to a slab and not a house. So just keep those people in mind. Stay in touch with them. It's not just the financial impact of going through that, but it's also the emotional impact of having lost everything. And I remember Sally was a girl in our youth department in Odessa way back in the 70s, and her home burned. And she was just devastated. All her clothes, all her pictures, and her parents had shortly before that gotten a divorce. So she had all those pictures of her parents when they were together and the family was together. And Sally was now in high school, but she was just devastated most. I remember sitting and talking to her about the loss she had. So talking about stuff like this is real life, folks. And we're a financial organization that helps people financially, but there's some things you can't recover from. And you don't even need to say anything to people because you don't know what to say.
Right.
Sometimes when you say the right thing, it ain't the right thing. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And
And
so
yeah,
you
but
just need
being
to
there
put an
for
arm,
folks.
yeah,
Yeah.
just being there. You're right, Kristen. Just putting an
Mhm.
arm around them and saying, "Hey, I care."
Yeah, well, and I love that that's the heartbeat of Mosley Wealth Management. And so, it's interesting. You talked about how it's so much more than just financial. And I think that's one of my mentors told me when I first got into this industry as well, that personal finance is often more personal than finance. There's so much that goes into this. And this is why we try to have these discussions and talk about real life and also come at things from a very comprehensive, holistic perspective when it comes to building a financial plan for you. And I'll just take this opportunity to share that if you are needing help putting together a financial plan, maybe you've been affected by the fires, maybe you've had a different type of loss or a different type of devastation in your life, and you need help building a solid plan for your future. This is why Tom and the team of Mosley Wealth Management love to be able to offer you a complimentary personalized retirement blueprint. We're going to be talking more about that throughout today's show, but to claim yours and to schedule your appointment to receive that completely complimentary to you, simply call 888-930-5609. We're going to start off today's conversation by talking about the reality that for today's modern retiree, it's not your parents' or your grandparents' retirement anymore. The landscape of retirement, Tom, has just really changed. And there's a lot of concerns that folks have that come with those changes. I think a lot of people wish we could rewind the clock and go back to a more simple time. And they're wondering, okay, is that even possible? Could I even experience that peace of mind and security that previous generations had with their retirement? So let me first ask this. What comes to the top of your mind when you think about how much retirement has changed for pre-retirees and retirees today?
Well, I think one statistic I ran across about 2 months ago, and it said that in the 1970s, 63% of everybody, every adult who was out there was covered by a pension. Now, 63% of the people didn't have a pension. There was about 47% of the people had a pension. A
Mm-hmm.
pension is an annuity that a company buys. It's backed up by an insurance company. It's an income annuity, and it guarantees that person, it's a defined benefit plan. It guarantees that person and their spouse, if they choose that option, to have a guaranteed income for the rest of their lives. Well, in the 70s, 47% of the people had one, and 63% of the adults in America were covered by one, largely because not every household back then, it seems like it is now, is a two income earning household.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's changed the two from one to two income in almost every household. But secondly, the covering by a pension. Now, 1 out of 6 or 16% of everybody is covered by a pension because we've moved, and the shift came with the Revenue Act in 1978. Sounded great because most everybody had, more than half the people had a pension, and they added on this thing called a 401k, or if you worked at a nonprofit, it was a 403b. And if you were a school teacher, it was a TSA, a tax sheltered annuity. And all of those things came in with the Revenue Act of 1978. And those introduced us to, sounded similar, but it was a defined contribution plan. So along came those defined contributions, and the landscape, it didn't impact a great deal to start with, because let's go back to those thrilling days of yesteryear, as they used to say on the Lone Ranger,
Mm-hmm.
because, that you go back to those thrilling days and 63% of the people still had their pension, and everybody was getting these 401ks. And so it was a both and rather than an either or.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And now that pensions really are not there for most folks, the burden has been placed on our shoulders of knowing not just how to save the money, but then how to take that lump sum and turn it into income for retirement. And no instruction manuals were given on how to do that or how to even manage this money, right?
Exactly. I mean, you couldn't say it better. I use the term on this show a lot, yo-yo. You're on your own. And
Hmm.
pretty much instead of that company putting that money into that defined benefit pension, you're on your own anymore for the defined contribution. Now, when it first started, the largest match, I mean, they came into this thing and jumped head first because the largest match when they first started, late 70s, early 80s, was a 10% match. That meant for every dollar you put in up to 10%, they would match up to 10% of your salary. So if you could designate 10% of your salary and the company put in 10% of to match that, you got 20% for just putting in 10%. It was a great deal,
Right.
and everybody should have jumped into because hey, here not only was the income coming from the pension, but the lump sum was building in the 401k.
Hmm.
The pensions have gone from 47 or 63% of the people covered down to 16%. And the defined contribution 401ks have gone now where I read recently the largest match is a crazy little combination they've come up with is 2% up to 4% or 50% up to 4%, which means 2%. So the rules of retirement have changed, and no pension in many cases now. 5 out of 6 people don't have a pension, and the 401k, you're not getting that match that you were getting. And so now we enter the twilight zone of retirement. And I really want to talk about this and delve into this in the second segment, but we're moving from that accumulation phase where, when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, you're accumulating money. It's your lump sum that's the most important thing. But I say often on this show, it's your income that's more important. The pensions solve that right off the bat, but in many cases, they're gone now. And
Hmm.
so now you move into that distribution phase, and you've got a lumber yard there, a pile of money there, and you don't know how long it's going to last unless you sit down with one of our all-star advisors at Mosley Wealth Management, and we sit down with you and from a blank piece of paper build you a retirement blueprint. When we do that, you're going to know how much money you need to allocate towards your income, and you're going to know that you're going to have guaranteed income for life. You got to call in to get that, though.
And that number to call is 888-930-5609. We know that it can feel very overwhelming if you're feeling like the retirement burden has been placed on your shoulders. But Tom and the team of Mosley Wealth Management have helped thousands of folks retire over the past almost 30 years, and they would love to help put together a solid blueprint for you as well. And it's free, so we invite you to pick up the phone and call 888-930-5609.
Can you remember how different life was when you were 10 years old and 20 years old and 30 years old? You could be retired for 30 years or more as well. Imagine the different stages you will experience in a long retirement. One of the biggest concerns for most retirees is running out of money in retirement. If you've never planned for decades worth of income spending from your investments, savings, Social Security, and other resources, you don't want to get it wrong. Actively plan for a successful retirement by working together with a financial advisor whose practice designs these retirement income strategies every day in their firm. Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management devises retirement income strategies for listeners just like you, and it's complimentary to get started. Call Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management and ask for your own complimentary retirement income strategy. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back, Southern California. You're listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. And today we are diving into the fact that it's not your parents' or grandparents' retirement anymore. Tom, you did such a great job in the first segment detailing why the retirement landscape has changed so much. And I want to go back and have you expand on something you mentioned, because I think it really helps folks to understand the shift that needs to happen. So we were talking about the fact that with 401ks, 403bs, all of these defined contribution plans, the retirement burden was placed on our shoulders. It's up to us when we're working to figure out how to even invest the money. There's no instruction manual that comes with that. But then, even more challenging is figuring out how do you create a distribution plan from those accounts for yourself to generate income that's going to last you through the rest of your retirement. That's the important pivot that has to occur. And I think that because so much of our industry is focused on the accumulation phase when you're working and you're saving and you're putting money away, this is one thing that really sets you and the team of Mosley Wealth Management apart. You are helping people figure out how to take those lump sums they've accumulated and turn them into income streams that are going to last them for the rest of their lives. And I don't think that shift and that transition gets talked about enough.
I think about the Cowboys, not the Dallas Cowboys, because I don't think about them much at all. But I think about the Cowboys in the Western movies when they were going across the desert and they had that canteen. They had that canteen of water. And so many times part of the drama of the movie or the show is how do we ration the water to make sure that we have enough to get through the desert? And it's pretty tough. There, in just listening to you introduce that, I could talk for about 10 minutes on about 3 different subjects. For instance, the lack of wisdom people have in investing, even in their own 401k. And I don't know where to put it. So many people walk in and say, I mean, that's what they say. I don't know where to put it. I just picked these. It sounded good. That's why the most popular funds are the target funds. And if you'll Google target funds articles in Wall Street Journal, you'll find out that they perform pretty poorly as far as an overall, because they're based on the old philosophy of bonds going opposite of stock, and that doesn't happen so much anymore at all since 2000. It really hasn't happened that. So the instruction manual, even if you had one before 20-25 years ago, it's all been ripped up and there needs to be a new one. And Kristin, so many people get to retirement and in that accumulation phase, they've worked with a company, even call themselves Blank Investments, an investment company. And they're not working with a planner, with a financial planner or a wealth management firm that actually goes in and builds a blueprint. So they keep doing the same things they've always done. And that's a good way to destroy your retirement in a hurry, because when you're accumulating, what are you concerned about? You're concerned about the lump sum. How much is there? How much am I making each year? And when you're distributing, you should be concerned is how much do I still have that I had last year? I mean, how much did it decrease in the ups and downs of the market, which most people are still in some ways still invested in the market, but how much did it go down? And how small is that lumber yard or that pile of money getting? And, when you're 65, it's easy just to keep that same accumulation philosophy with the investment company.
Yep.
But when you go to that pile of money to get your annual allotment when you're 75, and you look at it and you see how much it shrank or shrunk or whatever you want to call it, whatever the right word is, okay?
Right.
It ain't as big as it used to be. And you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm pretty healthy. My parents lived into their 80s and 90s. Will I have enough money? And so that pile of statements is not a plan. And it's definitely not an income plan we address in a retirement blueprint that we build for people who call in from this show. And some of you are sitting there in your living room or your kitchen or in your workshop, in the garage. I've had people tell me recently they listen to me in all those places, or in your car. You're headed somewhere in your car and you've been listening to me at this hour on this station for months. And you say, I really need to get around to doing that. And you need to call in because you've got just a pile of statements. You don't have a plan for income for the rest of your life. And there's a challenge that comes with that. And that is you do not know if your money's going to last. So it's so important that you respond and that you do something differently in the distribution phase than you've been doing during that accumulation phase.
Yes, that is such an important transition that needs to happen. And if you want help making that transition successfully, again, we encourage you to reach out and schedule your time to come in and receive your very own complimentary retirement blueprint from the team of Mosley Wealth Management. Two ways you can connect. You can call 888-930-5609. Or if you're driving, we want you to be safe. You can always visit the website when you're done driving, and that's mosleywealthmanagement.com. That's MOSLEY wealthmanagement.com. Well, longevity, Tom, that's another challenge that, this generation is facing compared to previous generations. It used to be a lot of times folks might retire as early as age 62 and then pass away as early as age 65. There wasn't this huge span of time left in retirement. But if you think about it, a lot of folks are easily living 20, 30, 40 years in retirement. That's the same amount of time that some folks spent in the workforce.
Yeah, what if you had as many years, and you knew this going in? It's a potential. What if you had as many years that you've spent accumulating your wealth, if you had as many years that you had to draw upon that wealth? I mean, that would be a scary thought for most people. In 1935, when Social Security first started, the average age of the American male was 61 years and 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's well into the 80s. So that's one reason Social Security has such a stress point right now, because it was never intended to pay out that long. And the longer you live, the more it hurts. Now, about 6 months ago, I had a couple that have been with me over a decade. They've since moved from Southern California to Lake Havasu area. And by the way, I've got clients, Kristin, in 32 states.
That's
People have moved.
amazing. Yeah.
Every one of them came to me, except for some from the state of Texas that I've known. Every one of them came to me in California, and then they've moved to other states. But this client and his wife, they were back here, and the wife is a dear person, but she kept, in the meeting we had in Anaheim when they were back here, she kept looking at her watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from being in the ministry, that means, wow, Pastor, you're way over time, but or you're busy or something's going
right.
on. So finally, I asked her, I said, Sue, do you guys have some place to go? Now, mind you, she's 73 years of age, and her husband, whose name's Tom, is 76 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, we're going to go see Tom's parents. And Tom's 76 years old. I said, how
Mm-hmm.
old are Tom's parents? And Tom said, my dad's 96 and my mom's 93. They're both 20 years older than each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I, foolishly, in my dumbfoundedness, I said, do they live in a home? And Sue said, yeah, their home. They're
Mm-hmm.
still living in their home at 96 and 93. And we have to go help them by doing some things around their yard.
Mm-hmm.
So that boy's got longevity in his genes, if you understand.
Right.
And not just you, but what if they continue to come up with medicine that allows you to live longer and longer and longer? And I hope they come up with medicine that allows us to keep our mind and not go through some of the dementia issues that a lot of people have. But longevity, you don't know how long you're going to live. And so many people come to me from time to time, Kristin, and they say, well, my parents passed away in their early 70s. I figure that's when I'll go. You can't count on that at all.
No.
Only God himself knows when you're going to pass.
Yeah.
So you've got to figure on a long retirement and a long distribution phase of that lumberyard that you've built up through the years. You can't go into it with a hope strategy.
Right.
I hope it'll work out. I want to keep it in the market, and then boom, right at the wrong time, the market goes down 50%. You say, we hadn't had one of those in a while. Hey, you need to listen to what you just said if you're saying that. We haven't
Mm-hmm.
had one of those in a while.
Right.
What if we do have one of those in a while?
Yep.
And a lot of people say, well, I don't feel like that's going to happen. Well, great. Your feelings are really good, especially if you eat pizza late at night and sleep, on pizza, and you have those dreams, and your feelings are great. But the market depends on factors that we don't even know sometimes. A black swan situation like 9/11 or
Mhm.
a
COVID.
COVID situation or those kind of things. So is that the kind of retirement and distribution phase? And you say distribution, let's get more important here. Income phase. If is
Yes.
that what your retirement income is based on? A hope strategy that you don't run out of money and you're just going to take out a certain amount every single year? Why don't you let us build you a retirement blueprint? It'll start with a foundation of income, and it'll adjust as you have inflation and we face inflation through the years. Third, your investments will be at a risk level that are equal to your age and equal to your risk tolerance. Fourth, your taxes will be considered because that's going to eat a big hole. And if taxes don't eat a big hole, fifth, your health care will eat a big hole. And then legacy, how do you leave it? All six of those things I just named are in your retirement blueprint that we're waiting to build for you, but you've got to call us.
Yes, it's not just something that can be picked up off a shelf and sent to you, because what's going to happen is you're going to be able to come in, meet with one of the all-star advisors from Mosley Wealth Management, and they're going to start with a blank sheet of paper. They're going to want to get to know you. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your desires? What are the things that get you excited waking up in the morning? What are the things that are keeping you up at night? And how can they put together a plan to help alleviate that stress for you? That number to call to claim your complimentary retirement blueprint is 888-930-5609, or you can visit us online at mosleywealthmanagement.com. That's MOSLEY wealthmanagement.com. We'll be back with more right after this.
Which will you spend more money on in retirement? Food or healthcare? Do you take your investments out of the stock market now that you're retired? How do you know if you've saved enough to stay retired? Will your Social Security check be reduced in the future? How do you produce income from your nest egg to fight costs like taxes and inflation? At Mosley Wealth Management, Tom Mosley and the team take the guessing out of retirement planning by devising a written plan that accounts for all of your concerns. The bigger question, are you going to be okay in retirement? Find out the answers to your retirement questions by calling Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. Income, investments, Social Security, Medicare, longevity, health care. We cover these solutions and all of those other questions on your mind to answer, are you going to be okay in retirement? Call Tom Mosley and Mosley Wealth Management for your own complimentary retirement review, 888-930-5609.
Welcome back, Southern California. You're listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management, and I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. We're so glad you're joining us today. If you're just tuning in, we've been talking a lot about the challenges that today's modern retiree is facing, and really the fact that it's not the same retirement that our parents and our grandparents experienced. But there are tools, and this is the good news, there are tools that exist which can be used to help combat those challenges. And I know we're going to be talking about a lot of those solutions as we move on in today's show. But one of the challenges that we know is on the top of a lot of folks' minds, of course, we've already talked about the fact that we are living longer than we ever have before. There's the challenge of figuring out how to turn the lump sum of money you've accumulated over your lifetime into an ongoing steady stream of income that's going to last you throughout the rest of your life. And one of the direct challenges that can impact that is inflation. Tom, we have talked about this previously. It's everywhere, right? It's in the news. It's affected everyone. But one of the interesting things that's been said about inflation is that it's not an equal opportunity offender. Can you explain what that statement means?
Yeah, not everybody buys the same stuff. Not everybody eats the same food. For instance, Eggs. I mean, boy, eggs have just taken it right broadside. I think every shell on every egg is cracked just by the attack they've been under because the
It's like
cost.
it's up 47%, right? That's the
Yeah,
recent stat I've
yeah.
seen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's just all over the place. So if you're an egg eater, you've been in trouble, and
Mhm.
you've been hit higher than if you've been hit by some of the other kinds of food that you might eat that aren't there. If you don't travel, you haven't been hit, but if you do travel, you've been hit by. If you travel by car, you've been hit by fuel cost. If you travel by air, you've been hit by airline prices going sky high. If you stay in hotels, you've been hit by the surge in hotel prices. If you eat out, you've been hit. Oh my goodness, it just seems like it's so huge every now and then. It seems like on Friday night my daughter comes over. She's got two kids, and we
Mhm.
we go out somewhere to eat. Maybe we pick up another child and another and adult child, and we pick up their husband, and I'm paying for 8 or 9
Mhm.
because I want to pay. I don't want my kids to have to pay when they go eat with me. And it's $120 to $140 even at a nominal restaurant.
Right.
And if you go somewhere nice, it's even more than that. So, food and hotels, if you're traveling, we talked about that, but food, gas, energy, everything is up. So much so that I do know people who are marginal in what they've saved, that even with the blueprints that we've made for them for income, the fun money, the play money, we call the income part of a blueprint the paycheck, where you've got your income, but your income is set at a certain level. And when inflation comes along and you travel, or you go enjoy something, take a vacation, all of those things that cost so much extra now, you're going to have to take that out of your paycheck in most times. And it's really huge. It's really big compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's the perfect storm specifically for retirees because you have inflation, of course, causing the cost of things to rise, but it's often the things that are becoming more expensive are the things that people want to do in retirement, such as travel, for example. And now you're living on a fixed income. And yet, what I find really interesting is a lot of financial advisors out there don't have a plan for their clients to deal with inflation, or they're not even having this conversation about the impact that inflation can have on their clients' retirement dreams. So, I'm curious, how do you all treat this differently, and how do you address inflation with your clients?
Well, every single client is specific to that client. I mean, how many times do we establish that on the show? But what you do is and I try to use illustrations to show and to make it come alive. It's like water faucets, and you need a certain level of water. And when you need some more water, you either turn that faucet on stronger. That's what you do if you have a lumber yard. You say, well, I'm going to take this much out each month or each year to live off of, and then boom, along comes 8.7% inflation like a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
or 4.7 like it was last year, even though we only got a 2.7 raise in Social Security. So you're taking more out than you originally planned. You're draining it faster. And
Mhm.
so you have to have multiple faucets. Now let's talk about the faucets, okay? If you are single and you have Social Security, that's a faucet that you can turn on. At a certain level, you can turn on your Social Security. The longer you wait, the more the flow comes out of that faucet, the more money comes out of that faucet. If there are two of you, you can strategize because you have two Social Security faucets. You can turn one on and then early, maybe at a lower level, and then allow that larger one, the breadwinner one, to continue to grow, the larger Social Security to grow, so that when you do turn it on, you've got a lot more availability with that faucet.
Mhm.
You may have a pension, and that pension can be taken either as a flow on one life, or if you're married, a flow on two lives. So it's a different amount of flow, money that's going to come out of that pension. And then you have your 401k that most people turn over into an IRA. And so you've got that IRA that you can turn on with a faucet. You can just take money out of it. You can take part of that money and put it in a fixed income annuity so that that's going to kick out a certain amount of money each month. So look at all the faucets you've got, 1 or 2 socials, 1 or 2
Mhm.
pensions, 1 or 2 IRAs that are there that are coming on. You may want to do what we talked about on a show recently, semi-retire, where you still work, and that's going to be a faucet that you can bring in maybe $1,500 or $2,000 a month. So you say, well, I don't want to do some of those things and I want to do some of the other things. And okay, it's exactly what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about building your plan. You say, well, why don't I just worry about that when I get there? Because you may not position those faucets in the right way, in the
Mhm.
best way, so that you can turn them on and get the maximum income flow out of them.
And I'll
So
add in the most tax efficient way as well, because it's nothing's more tragic when folks haven't done strategic tax planning. And then so much of what they've accumulated is going to be devastated in taxes.
it's going to hit people. Ed Slott is known as America's authority on IRAs and 401ks, and he said taxes are the single biggest issue that will take away people's American dream, because you're going to get hit with taxes on your IRA. And most of that stuff doesn't have a cost of living adjustment.
Mhm.
Supposedly Social Security does, but inflation comes along then, and your fixed income at 65, it's not much at 85. I
Right.
mean, in many cases, you're going to need twice as much
Yes.
when you're 85. Let me give you a statistic that came from a survey, and you can do the math on this one. If you are looking at 3% inflation, and at 65, you need $6,000 a month or $72,000 to live off of
For
in
the
Southern
year.
California for the year.
Mhm.
It's not uncommon for that to be a number that we arrive at when we're helping people set up a blueprint. Well, in 20 years, at just 3% constant inflation, and remember, until now, inflation has never gone backwards. It always goes up, okay? But if it's just 3% increase per year, in 20 years, $6,000, $72,000 a year, $6,000 a month, $72,000 a year, you're going to need over $130,000 to buy the same amount of stuff. So
Mhm.
it's amazing how inflation is that silent killer that just creeps up in on you.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that in an income plan, when you're building that income plan, if you say, well, I've just got an investment plan, and you early on overspend, your fear early on is overspending. And I've seen so many people sit in my office that this is an absolute confirmed fact. You're sitting there in your 60s and you're afraid to do the things that you want to do, need to do, and can do in your 60s. I call those the go-go years,
Mhm.
because you've just retired. You want to go places, you want to see things you've always dreamed about. Some people call it a bucket list. That's what I call it. And you've got that bucket list out there, but you're afraid to do the bucket list because you're afraid that you're not going to have income when you're 85 and 90, or you're afraid one of you, if you're married, well, the surviving spouse is not going to have enough income after you're gone. So
Mhm.
you're so afraid that you sit there and you're paralyzed in your 60s and you never do what you really want to do. So many reasons to understand there's a difference in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s when you're accumulating, and your 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even 90s when you're distributing or you decumulating all of that money and you're spending that money. And there's such a difference in the way you need to be looking at things. You need a plan that
Yes.
will work for you.
Well, and Tom, I was going to say, I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who have been do it yourself investors. And during the accumulation phase of your retirement, when you're, trying to save as much as you possibly can, that's a little easier to do. But when it comes to the distribution phase, it's clear just based on the brief conversation we've had on this today, there's a lot more factors and complications that come into play, including inflation. So what would you say to someone who's listening today and realizing, you know what? it might be time for me to turn over the reins and have someone else build me a plan.
I mean, you can be a genius in the accumulation phase if you just stay the course. You just stay in the market. It goes down, but guess what? That's a great time to add. It also goes back up. But now you're in that distribution phase where you need a plan, and at least you need to change gears and realize that distribution and withdrawal are more important than growth and accumulation at that point. Hey, that's the plan we offer, but you've got to call in to get it.
And that number to call is 888-930-5609. You don't have to go it alone. The team of 𝗬𝘃 Wealth Management is here to help and serve you, but you've got to pick up the phone and call to schedule your time to come in and receive your complimentary retirement blueprint. 888-930-5609. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be asking the question, are you retirement ready? And most importantly, how do you know? Stay with us to find out.
For your own no-cost retirement blueprint, call Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Is having $1 million enough to retire? For years, many have considered this to be the goal amount to have for retirement savings. But that's the $1 million question. Is that enough for today's modern retiree? Are you sure you've saved enough for a 25 or 30-year retirement? Are you concerned about covering large expenses, including taxes and long-term care? If so, you're not alone. But there is a solution. With a comprehensive financial plan, you can take control of your finances to help you achieve your long-term goals. At Mosley Wealth Management, let us help you work towards peace of mind by implementing a complete retirement strategy. Call Tom Mosley and the team of Mosley Wealth Management right away to receive your complimentary written financial plan. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back, Southern California. You're listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and it's time now for us to address the question, are you retirement ready? And most importantly, how do you know? We've been talking on today's show about how it's not the same retirement that our parents or grandparents experienced. We know there's a lot of new challenges that all of us are facing in today's economic environment, and we want to help you successfully navigate those challenges. And so, Tom, I know that a huge question, a lot of folks, when they come in to meet with you and receive their complimentary retirement blueprint, a lot of our listeners that do that, their big question that's on the top of their minds is, can I go ahead and retire? And really, the subtext is, do I have enough money saved up, right? And if I do go ahead and retire, do I have enough? Am I going to be okay? And so let's talk about how you go about evaluating someone's retirement readiness. How can someone know if they're actually ready?
Well, let's go back to the major subject just for a second there. My grandparents had it easy because my grandfather worked for a company that gave him a pension, and they gave him a big party. And when was that party? That party was on his 65th birthday or thereabout. And they sent him on a golden horse off into retirement.
With a gold watch to boot, right?
With a gold watch. And two of my aunts fought over that gold watch for 30 years until both of them died within 5 days of each other. And I don't know who got the gold watch, and stuff. But it was easy because we knew that that was about the time that people were going to get retired from the company, but it was a mutual agreement at that time. And now you're pretty much on your own. You're on your own unless what happens? Unless they get ready to retire you. So when we're talking about it's not your grandparents' retirement anymore, they had more control over when they would retire, it seems, than we do now, because it's up to that company when they just decide to do a downsizing or a layoff or whatever you want to call it. And it seems the older folks are the ones that they lay off. And so you're sitting over there and you're trying to anticipate that. And some of you are out there saying, man, I don't want to get in that situation. I wonder, as you said, Kristin, to introduce this, do I have enough money to retire? Can we retire? Do we have enough? Which means, are we going to run out of income? Not now. We know we've got a lumber yard for now. Are we going to run out of income when we're in our 80s? And then when one of us passes away, if we're married, if you're single, it's just you. But if you've got an additional worry if you're married, because you're going to lose a Social Security, you're going to lose the married filing jointly tax status, which is going to, in many cases, drastically increase your personal income tax as a single person that survives you're the survivor of the marriage, and that your spouse passes away. You're going to go to that single tax filing bracket. And so, you've got to decide that. And you're sitting there asking yourself, you know, could I don't know how long I'm going to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what my health is going to be like, because sometimes health issues come on quickly. And especially when people have a friend who faces a sudden drastic health emergency and it takes their life. I mean, they are shook up,
Yeah.
because they're thinking, if I continue to work, I could win and that I could make more money. But if I continue to work and then I lose my health, then I've lost my retirement, and I've done it either too early or too late. Now, we talked about in the first segment that a lot of couples, they want to retire early in the go-go years. Well, who doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
But do you have enough money for the slow go and the no-go years?
Yep.
And I had a couple recently, and they're a great illustration, but a sad illustration, because this couple, they came to me about 4 years ago when they were both 62 years of age, and they were going to retire in about 8 years when they were 70. That was their plan. They were going to
Mm-hmm.
work because they were both in perfect health. They both were making really huge sums of money.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 or 3 years later, come to find out, he comes down with major heart issues and can't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a few months ago, she got laid off,
Oh
and
man.
she couldn't find a job making a couple of $100,000 a year because she's 65.
Right.
What company in most cases is going to hire? There's some that will,
Right.
but most people can't go out at 65 years old and knock down that huge income. So they came in and they had their plans of 70. And fortunately, in the retirement blueprint we had built for them, we had some contingency plans. Back to the segment I talked about earlier, we had some faucets that we could turn on for income through the years. And uh, and he was still drawing a little bit of disability, and then he went on Social Security, and she had some severance pay from the layoff because she had been there a long time. We were able to work that into the plan for immediate income, and we were able to put together a new strategy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, if you don't have a strategy, you can't adapt it to a new strategy. I mean, that sounds real profound, but you think about it, if you don't have a plan, then you've got a plan of having no plan.
Right.
And
Not to
and
decide is to decide, right? You
yeah,
said that with the
you
decision. Yeah.
so true, Chris. And you've already decided. I mean, it's easier to go in and rework a plan than it is to go in and start from scratch, especially when you're emotionally devastated, physically devastated, and you're beside yourself. Sometimes the whole reason for building a plan before you need a plan is you can do it in your right mind,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have your right mind when you just got hit with a layoff, or you just got hit with with a forced retirement or a force out. And there's an old saying, you don't want to wait until it starts raining to go fix the roof.
Right. Yep.
And you need to start putting that plan together beforehand.
So, what kinds of questions or things do you recommend that our listeners start thinking about and asking themselves from a retirement readiness standpoint to help them determine and assess if they're retirement ready?
There's a lot of questions, but I can give you the very first one you need to answer. What are you spending? And
Mm,
a lot of people say, well, I'm not retired yet. I don't really know. Well, the best way to do it in a science lab is to work from the known to the unknown and only change a few variables at a time. So we encourage all of our people, even if you're 2 years away from retirement, 3 years away from retirement, set your budget, know what you're spending. Now think about it. You've got a lump sum. Even if you do a hope strategy, you're going to eat some of that lump sum every single month. You're going to use some of that lump sum every single month. How much do you need? I've said before, I've got clients who need a little over $730, and I've got clients who need $30,000. That's per month. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to know what you're spending, because you could have a humongous lump sum. But if you've got a humongous income need, you're going to eat away at that quite quickly. So the very first thing we do when we start building a retirement blueprint, and the very first thing you need to do is you need to get, not necessarily control it, not necessarily go through drastic cuts. We're not talking about a financial diet yet,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But you need to know how much money you're eating every single month now. And once you get that budget, once you get that, then you can move and start looking at how much am I going to need? What's going to change when I retire?
Mm.
Your transportation might change as far as the driving, but your travel might change, and that you might want to travel those first few years. Most people do. So
Yeah.
work from the known, your budget now, to the unknown. And I've said before on here, you can email us at info@𝗤𝗁𝑊ealthmanagement.com. We've gotten literally dozens of these in the past couple of weeks, because a few shows ago we told you that you could get on and ask for this. But info@𝗤𝗁𝑊ealthmanagement.com, and ask for a budget worksheet. And we'll give you a detailed one-page budget worksheet that you can go through line by line by line and find out what your spending is now. And then you can start a brand new one and realize what your spending is going to be in retirement. That's your retirement budget. And that's your retirement bullseye target that you need to shoot at. And a lot of people, that's where you need to start. You say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I'll guarantee you, in building a financial plan, that is the first bite.
Yes. And it ties in beautifully with so many other things that we've covered on today's show. For example, once you know how much you need each month, then you can start looking at the different faucets that you have available, the faucets of income that you talked about earlier in the show. You can figure out which ones need to be turned on when. You can also then put together a strategic tax plan to make sure that you're using that income in the most tax efficient order. It's so important, not just the income streams you have, but knowing how to withdraw from them in the most tax efficient manner possible. So, my gosh, so much goes into this. Why don't you remind our listeners everything they're going to receive when they come in for that complimentary retirement blueprint? Because I know that a lot of folks listening are going, I don't have the answers to these questions, but they definitely want to get them and they want help figuring it out.
And not to belittle anybody out there, but so many people don't even have all the right questions even. And that's what we do. We have a full team of all-star advisors. We have 5 offices spread all over Southern California. Do not call in and ask for your blueprint to be sent to you, because it's a blank piece of paper until you come in. We find out where you are. We find out how much you need every single month. That's where we start. And we build income. We adjust it for inflation. We look at your investments. We look at taxes. We look at your health care and how that's going to be covered. We look at your legacy and how you're going to leave it. We call that a retirement blueprint. And I've got all-star advisors who are fiduciaries who are willing to build that for you for free. But you've got to also do one thing free. You've got to make a free phone call to get on our schedule.
Absolutely. And I want to stress that fiduciary element as well. All of the all-star advisors from Mosley Wealth Management have the fiduciary standard, meaning they have the legal and ethical obligation to always serve your best interest. They work for you, the client, nobody else. But again, as Tom said, you have to pick up the phone and make the call to schedule the time to come in and receive your complimentary retirement blueprint. 888-930-5609 is the number to call. Well, thanks so much for being here this weekend. We appreciate you joining us. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Right on the Money with Tom Mosley.
This is Right on the Money with Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management. Get your own no-cost complimentary retirement plan review. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through 𝗏sley Wealth Management Incorporated. 𝗏sley Wealth Management and 𝗏sley Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership license number OB61811. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refers to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength, claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the needs of an individual situation. All hypothetical examples are provided for illustrative purposes only. They do not represent real-life scenarios. 𝗏sley Insurance and Financial Services, nor its agents or representatives, may give tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any investment decisions. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Some of the information provided may be from one or more third parties, which we believe to be reliable sources, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by 𝗏sley Insurance and Financial Services.